One of the underappreciated aspects of producing high quality queens is to select breeders that have the traits that you want to propagate and that you would like to see in the next generation. And that's one of the things that I enjoy most about the job, is identifying colonies that have superior characteristics and qualities and using those as both sources of material for subsequent generations, both for queens, that is colonies to graft first instar larvae out of to start queen cells with, and also, and this is something that many people overlook, you also want to be doing the same thing on the drone side. So you want to have high quality colonies producing drones that your queens are going to mate with. Now, it's as much an art as it is a science in a certain respect, because it depends upon what traits you're looking for, right? And the more complicated you make your selection criteria, the more difficult it is to actually find queens that you can confidently assign responsibility for a colony's temperament, honey production, mite tolerance, virus resistance, whatever it is you want to select for. So it's easy, what I'm trying to say is it's easy to make mistakes and to fool yourself into thinking that you've got breeder queens that exhibit all the characteristics that you want unless you have rigorously evaluated them over a long period of time. So one of the things that we try to do is we try to pool colonies after the first year that have been exceptional performers and evaluate them over the next year to make sure that the signs and signals that we thought we were seeing after the first year of that queen heading a colony are in fact present the subsequent year too, and that there wasn't just something that happened by chance that caused those colonies to appear to be something other than they were. Whether it's they produced more honey because they happened to be on the northeast corner of the bee yard and all the nectar sources were out toward the northeast, so that colony picked up foragers that got lost or got tired on the way home, and they got more than their fair share of free contributions from bees foraging that belong to other colonies. That happens all the time. Or something else, whether that colony mysteriously, miraculously escaped mite infestation, for instance, and wasn't exposed to mite parasitism at the same intensity as other colonies in the bee yard, and consequently you might evaluate them to be superior when it came to mite tolerance, when in fact all that really happened was they didn't have a mite infestation of any appreciable level. So the other thing that we like to do is we like to put our colonies into trials where we actively expose them to mites and then evaluate how they do in response to that infestation. So that's something else that we do that's a little more formal and beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today. But suffice it to say that if you're going to rear queens, the first and most important consideration is to find colonies that exhibit the traits that you want to keep and propagate and expand upon in your colonies or in your customers' colonies. And that's it from a theoretical perspective. I mean, it's that simple, but it's that complicated too. The more traits you're trying to select for at the same time, the more difficult it becomes. So I always suggest to people that are just beginning queen rearing to focus on one thing and try to do that, and don't confuse yourself with trying to select for too many things all at once, at least until you've got a sustainable population that you can work with that has the trait you're most interested in. So if you're after honey production, focus on honey production. If your principal aim is gentleness, then focus on that. If you try to do too much all at the same time, it's going to take longer and you're going to make more mistakes and you're going to see less progress. So a salient example of that is our struggle and trials in developing a population of bees. And that's important. Let me digress a minute. Ultimately, if you're going to be good at queen rearing, you're going to have a population you can select from. It's not just a handful of colonies. So one of the things we struggled with early on in our efforts to find and sustain a population of honeybees that would tolerate varroa mites is to make sure that we correctly identified those colonies and that we looked at their progeny. We evaluated the performance of their progeny so that we could tell whether or not we were making progress. And we focused on that almost to the exclusion of everything else. Now, one of the things that perhaps was of benefit, but certainly was an especially challenging problem for us during that time frame, and I'm talking about the early mid-90s, late 90s, Africanized bees were widely present in Texas at that point, and they dominated the feral population. And the feral population density is higher than most people appreciate. Consequently, we had problems with mismatings. We were having our queens fly off and mate with drones from New World African colonies. And as a consequence, our bees, though they became more mite tolerant like we wanted, and that was our principal aim, they also became more defensive than we wanted. And that just seemed to come with the territory in those days. Despite our best efforts to constantly requeen and cull colonies that exhibited hyper-defensive behavior, sometimes we still encountered that. And we had overall a population that was more defensive than we had previously and more defensive than we wanted. So we wanted to work on that, but I didn't want to focus all of our energies on trying to restrain or reduce defensive behavior in our population until we had widespread penetrance for the varroa tolerance or resistance, mite resistance, if you will, that we wanted. So it wasn't until the late 90s that we were really able to turn our attention from mite resistance or varroa tolerance and to suppressing defensive behavior. We were able to do it, but we had to do it sort of sequentially, or at least that's what I did, because it made the problem more tractable, if you will. Okay, so that's a little primer on what you need to be thinking about as you start queen rearing. Now we're going to look at some of the things that go into queen rearing, and we're going to begin with grafting. And that is pulling first instar larvae out of breeder colonies that we've selected and physically transferring those first instar larvae from the comb, from the breeder colony, into queen cell cups, which then subsequently are placed into queenless units to get queen cells started. So I'm going to turn the program over now to Roosevelt Roberson, who's a fascinating guy, one of my favorite human beings, and I think equally important, he was my father, Benford Weaver's right-hand man when I was a little boy, and he was taught by the best, just as I was. And he is, without a doubt, unquestionably, one of the best beekeepers in the world. So let's follow Roosevelt as he goes through the process of removing grafting larvae from breeder queens and taking them in to our very talented women who then do the grafting. Hey, Roosevelt.
Hi.
So I was just telling the audience that one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you learned beekeeping from my father, and it's no wonder that you're one of the best beekeepers in the world because you learned from the best.
I have to say amen to that.
And not only that, but when I was a little boy and I was just getting started in bees, when my dad wasn't there to help me understand more about how to manage colonies, guess who was?
Yes, sir.
So I learned from you too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Roosevelt, I was just telling them about breeder selection, and now I'm going to let you show how we pull grafting larvae, okay, and take it into the women to start the process of queen rearing.
Okay.
So if you could just go into what you do and how you do it, and anything else you think of while you're pulling grafting larvae, well, you're on.
Okay. So we go into the hive. We got the smoke there until we're good. And then we open up slowly, which we're looking for larva. Larva, which usually we want it to be a certain age, probably about 72 hours old. But we can always get them to hatch, for the queen to hatch out on a certain date. Now we don't have sunshine today. It'd be more appropriate if we had sunshine, but it's a little cloudy today. But see, can we find some good larva, the right age that we really like? Well, some days we go in and find a larva real quickly, and some days we can't. Sometimes, like I say, some days we can't get we may have some here. Okay, we may have something right here in this frame. So we'll take it in to the ladies and let them put it under the light, and they can tell me, do I have the right size or not, okay? So we'll take this on inside. Hey, Billy, I want you to look at this and see. I hope you can find some in here. Okay, now these are the ones we grafted yesterday. We like to let them stay in at least 24 hours before they can give them a good start. So therefore, we're gonna take them off and move them to a finishing hive, which is above excluder. But anyway, we're gonna see how good did they start. Did they get a good start? So try to get some of the bees off of it. Now we got a good, perfect start. Perfect start here. If you can see all the little wax on the end, that let me know they got a good start. They've been well fed royal jelly. Okay. Now, yeah, I'm real pleased with the start of these here. Now, every one is almost started. If we can get a good finish, every one of these cells gonna be a queen. So therefore, those 4 frames was a real good start. When you see all these bees clustered like this on here, they really feeding that larva. So those hives are queenless. What they really trying to do is raise themselves a queen. Because every hive knows it's supposed to have a queen, so they going to work trying to raise themselves a queen. Now we got all these baby cells out. Now what we're gonna do now, we're gonna bring those frames out and put them in here and let them be in there for 24 hours, and then we'll move those out. This is kind of in our season. Our sales don't be as many as we usually like it to be, because like this is the season. Everything the bees are slowing down. They know when time to slow down. So right now they're slowing down. Thank you. Okay. So we putting these in, which they just grafted, and they'll be in here 24 hours, and we may not get time to move them out tomorrow, but we will move them Monday morning. Now we always like to feed them thin syrup while they can feed. They can go ahead and feed it. Feed that larva. Okay, now we'll put the lid back on them, and we won't bother them anymore till Monday.
Okay, one of the things that you want to bear in mind when you're raising queens is you want to try to put your colonies that are going to be raising queen cells in good locations where they have abundant floral resources, lots of pollen, and to the extent possible nectar. This is an example of a good location to rear queens in, particularly in the fall. We've got a couple of plants around us that are key. So we have aster, which is going to provide a nectar source. We've got broomweed, which is a good pollen source. And you can see that this pasture is full of this stuff. And so these bees are going to be doing better than other colonies in other parts of the world nearby that don't have those floral resources. So that's always something that you want to keep in mind when you're picking spots to put your bees into rear queen cells. So the way we do it is we finish queen cells above an excluder in a colony that's got 2 stories or 2.5 stories. And we work up young brood, that is, we bring young brood out of the bottom where the queens can find up above the excluder, and we put the queen cells down in between those combs of brood. So as you can see right here, we've got young brood in the center of that comb, surrounded by honey. Same thing on this side. And so here are the queen cells that were dropped in just earlier today, just hours ago. So as you can see, they've got a little wax on them, and they've been fed royal jelly, and over the next 24 to 36 hours, you're going to see more and more royal jelly build up in the bottom of these cell cups as they are provisioned by the nurse bees. And that's the reason that you bring young brood up, because it lures nurse bees out of the colony up above the excluder where they'll be to take care of the queen cells. Thank you. Sometimes our cell-finishing colonies can get to be more defensive than other hives because they feel queenless in the top. They're able to sense that they do not have a queen above that excluder, which is why they continue to feed the baby cells that have been moved in. Even though the colony's queen right, we've got bees, nurse bees up above the excluder that feel queenless. And so they're going to continue to feed royal jelly to those queen cells that we've moved in. Okay, so we're now to the last step in the process, and that is we're going to go through the mating nukes, where we've introduced a mature queen cell 2 weeks or more ago, and that queen has emerged from the queen cell, had a chance to fly out and mate, and then return to the nuke and start laying eggs. We only catch queens that are laying. So we have to make sure as we work through these nukes that we see eggs before we capture the queen and put her in the cage. And the other part of the program that we're going to be talking about and examining today is cycling through the queen nuke. That is, making it productive for yet one more go, one more queen. And the way we do that is after we've captured the queen out of the nuke, we're going to introduce a mature queen cell back into the nuke so that the process can begin again. And this young queen can emerge, mature, fly off and mate, come back to the nuke and begin laying eggs. One of the important things to do is to make sure that our queen cells are viable. So what I've done is I've gone into one of the queen cells and I've examined the developing, almost mature queen. There she is. And did you detect that movement? There's a little bit of movement there. See her kicking her legs around? So we want to make sure that our queens are viable and that they're almost mature. So these are 10-day-old cells, almost 11. And we have to get them in the nukes quickly because these queens are just about to hatch or eclose or emerge. So that's what an almost mature queen looks like. She's got complete wings. She's starting to get pigmentation. Her legs are ready and active. She's almost done. Okay. Ana Rosa, why don't you talk to us about catching queens? Got her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, fixing the leaf. Okay.
So these are clipped and marked queens,
And then
right?
I'm gonna clip it.
Explain what you're doing.
I'm gonna clip and mark this queen.
So she's clipping one wing on one side.
And then mark it just like this.
Is that just a paint pen?
She's letting the blue paint dry from the paint pen, and she's going to put the queen in the cage. Now sometimes we catch queens with bees in them because that queen will be shipped out and we want attendance with her.
Yeah, I'm gonna put
Other
some.
times we'll catch lots of queens without any bees in them and we'll store them that way and then ship them off to customers in battery boxes or large numbers of cages in a separate miniature box with bees surrounding them, or surrounding the queens, that is. 7 bees.
They're ready to go.
We've caught queens out of these nukes, and so the final step in starting the process over again for one more cycle is to place a mature queen cell in that nuke. Anita's going to show us how she does it. Very sure hands. She's got to secure that in there, press it in a bit. Okay, that's all there is to it. And so this queen nuke is going to have the chance to rear one more queen before the end of the year. We want to be done catching queens by around Halloween, and then we will start all over again.
We have people who order the queens. They come through our website. Then we have a program that just pulls their name up. I go to it and I print out their label. We send everything Priority Mail Express. Print it out. Once it prints, it's a really simple process. I'm going to put it on this envelope. We always send a beekeeper's guide so that people know if they haven't ever requeened, then they know what to do. We have 3 different kinds of queens that we send out. This is a marked queen. 1 dot means that she has only been marked, which you will see the blue dot on her.
Okay.
And then clip to mark, the 2 lines mean that she has been clipped and marked. And then what that means is 1 wing has been clipped so that she cannot fly away. Take the queen, put it in, then seal it and send it out. And as you can see, we have holes in the envelope so that the bees can have fresh air. And then it takes about 2 days.
Okay, so we've tried to give you a brief rundown of various aspects of queen rearing. We didn't have time to delve in detail into any particular step really, but I hope this has been a useful overview of how we do it, and I encourage you to give it a try. If nothing else, it'll make you a much better beekeeper, and you'll gain greater appreciation for the value of queens and what goes into the process once you've tried to do it yourself. We've had a really good year this year. I must say we feel very blessed because the way the year started off with no spring honey flow, almost unheard of in this part of Texas, it didn't look like we were going to be able to rear many queens, but things turned around for us quickly, and this has been one of the better queen rearing years we've had in a long, long time. We've produced many tens of thousands of queens this year, and we look forward to doing it again next year.